Hello everyone and welcome to the ninth and actually in fact final episode in my Materialize CSS miniseries. And actually I'm going to go ahead and start off this video just by kind of explaining why I decided to make this one the last video, as there actually are quite a few concepts in Materialize that we never got to. In fact, like a vast majority of these we didn't get to, and they're very small. Some of them, like if you click on this, um, the page is not too big, although this one's a little bit big, but it's all about these little circular buttons. And part of that is due to two reasons. One, if you do plan to use Materialize for these features, I highly recommend you come here and check it out for yourself. Like I think throughout the last like 9 or so episodes, I've set a pretty good kind of demonstration or example of how you can go through, because that's part of the way I've been going about making these videos. And same with a lot of my tutorial series, is I will go through the documentation as I write this. Even if I know it, even if I've memorized how to write the code, I will go through the documentation as if I don't. That way I can set an example of how you can do it yourself if I don't cover it, and how you can kind of figure it out for yourself, which is one of the most important skills in software engineering. And partially the second reason is this was partially supposed to be a mini series, and I don't want this one to drag on too long, because there are quite a few series that I'm very excited to get to, and especially since I've been doing front-end web development for pretty much, aside from like 1 or 2 mini series, I've been doing front-end development tutorials for the last almost two months or 2.5. So I'm getting a little bit excited to do the back-end tutorials that I'm planning, and just in general other kind of programming tutorials, which I will go into towards the end of this video. I'll have a what's next kind of section, a chapter on the bottom, and you can see like all the tutorial series I have planned for the future, that some of them are front-end development, but a lot of them are not. So those are kind of the two reasons why I'm going to go ahead and call it at this video at the end, which we will be covering modals, which is a pretty cool topic. And again, in this video as well, I will be going through every single bit of the documentation that as to set, a kind of example as to how you can go through the rest of these if you want. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start off with our quick recap, and we will go through as normal until the end, where we will kind of talk about what's next. So I'm going to open up our index.html. Come here to our agenda, scroll it down, and I'll just scroll down the actual checklist, and I'll hit go live, and that might have failed. Yep. Okay, so again, when you actually don't like select your HTML file and you hit go live, it will be confused and it will not open the right folder. For example, I'm going to go ahead and do that again, but you can actually just navigate to your correct folder, and it'll bring you to your file once you click on the right folder, like this. So this is our code that we were looking for. And just as a quick recap, we covered cards in the previous episode. You can create a card by using a div that has the class of card in it, and this is kind of the overarching class or the overarching div. And everything that goes inside is somewhat of a modularized system. And like what modularized or modularized means is that there are different sections that you can, kind of pick and choose and add to the card. Like if you add this section here, it'll add the image, but the card will function perfectly fine without it, just like that. The image is gone and the red button is gone because that's part of the image. But if you add that back in, then it's there. And same thing with the card content. If you don't want content for whatever reason, again, you can remove it and you still get the card image, you still get the card tabs, and you still get all the other sections functioning just fine without it. And again, the same thing goes for these two. So like the gist is you can remove any of these sections and the card will work just as fine. So that's really cool that, you can pick and choose which components you want to use. And of course, there are the card image component, the card content, card tabs. And then this card content under card tabs is for this tab thing. And then there's the card reveal, which if you click on the image, it'll reveal that. And if you remove the card reveal, then the pop-up will remove itself as well. So, again, you can choose what components of a card you want to use, which are pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this code just so we don't get confused. And we are left with our simple header here with our with our side nav and our nav bar when we make the screen big enough. And I'm going to check this off. So the first thing we're going to do is create a basic modal, which if we come here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go very slow through the documentation today just to, leave a lasting kind of model that you can work with. So modals are dialog boxes, confirmation messages, or other content that can be called up. In order for it to work, you have to add the modal ID, and then you have to add the modal close to your button. So if you click on this, this shows you an example. It pops up. This is what a modal is. It darkens the background, and it's this little kind of card that's floating more or less on top of the rest of the website, like that. So that's what we're going to be making. And to actually implement this, you have to have a modal trigger, which is this button here. This button acts as the trigger. It's an A with the button class and the modal trigger class. And then we actually use a div for the modal itself, which we give an ID, and then we give a class of modal. And inside we can give it a content and a footer. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy all of this for now. And we're going to have to set some things in the JavaScript because modals are dependent on the JavaScript portion of Materialize. Although actually I think with the m.auto init, it will handle it for us if I'm not mistaken. So if I click on this, yeah, it does. So now I click on this and we get our modal on our own website, it's just as simple as adding this HTML code right here. And of course, there are customizations we can make to the modal, which are specified here, but I'm going to quickly kind of recap what we've written here. Again, we have the trigger button, which has an href of the ID of the modal. So if you remember from just introduction to CSS, you in order to select an item or an element by ID, you use a hash versus like a dot. You'll select an item by a class, and if you put that as an href inside a link, it will actually link to the item. If that makes sense, it'll link you to go to where that element on your web page is, which is pretty cool. So the gist is that you can basically use this kind of concept to trigger your modal using the JavaScript. And then to actually get more fine-tuned control over the way the modal behaves, you can actually add this right here. Whoops. We can add this right here. And what this is going to do is it's going to select all modals. It's going to init them with elements. And then we are going to init them with some custom options. And this is how we can customize the behavior of our modal here. And just in case, I'm going to put this below the m.auto init. So for our options here, this is a standard JavaScript object. And again, I'm assuming you have basic JavaScript knowledge. You can, for example, set the opacity. And I'm just going to go down the list. Let's just say we wanted to set it to 0.0. What will happen now is when we click on this, notice the background does not darken at all. And if I set it to 1.0, it'll darken completely, or whoops, and you won't be able to see the background at all. It'll just be completely black. So the darker you want to make the background, the higher, the closer to 1 you want your number to be. And by default, it is 0.5, which creates this nice kind of dark background. And then, of course, the induration will actually specify how long in milliseconds that it takes. For example, if we want to have our modal come in very slowly, we can set that to 1,000, which is a second, 1,000 milliseconds. And notice the modal fades in over the course of a second instead of the average duration of 250, which will make it go in much faster. And then out duration, same thing, except in the other direction. So we can just quickly demonstrate that. Which out. Let's just say we wanted to make our thing fade out over the course of 2 seconds for whatever reason. So we click on this modal, comes in very fast, and then we click out, and then it kind of fades away over the course of 2 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and set that back to 250. You can basically also add other customizations like on open start and on open end. So on open start, and let's just say we wanted to call a function, and this is what's called an arrow function. It's the same thing if I write hello world here. Notice on our website here, I'm going to open up our console by right-clicking and hit inspect and go to the console. And if I click on the modal, it will print hello world when we start to open the modal. It's the same kind of syntax. If you're not familiar with arrow functions, you can say on open start or on open, for example, and we can stick this code in here as well. Just toss that in there. And instead of using an arrow function, we can just say on open start is the function on open. And this will do the same thing. We click on this and again, it prints hello world. So, either way works. And same thing with on open end, on close start, on close end. We can call JavaScript code when we interact with our modal. And that way, for example, if we have a form, the modal is a form itself where like you input stuff here. Then when you close it, we can have it so that the JavaScript will automatically kind of grab all the input that you put into it and manipulate it, log you in, or whatever you need. There are some other kind of properties like prevent scrolling, which I actually can't demonstrate that here because I don't have a scrolling modal. But if I come here to their example here, you notice that you can scroll on this modal. If you set prevent scrolling to true, it will turn on. It'll turn off scrolling on the modal. Although wait, actually no, I think prevent scrolling is scrolling on the page. My bad. So prevent scrolling is true by default, but if I set it to false here, notice now I click on the modal and I can still scroll on the website. So yeah, that was my bad. I misunderstood the property there. So that's one cool thing we can do. And then we have the dismissible, allow it to be dismissed by keyboard click, or if you click on the dark, notice if you click on the dark section, it will automatically dismiss the modal. But if we set if we set dismissible to false, then what happens is I click on here, I can't click anything to get rid of this modal except agree. And of course, the reason why agree will get rid of it is because here in our modal footer, we actually have an A called modal close that says agree in it. And that's how we can close it if we set dismissible to false. And then the final kind of two concepts are starting top and starting end, which will change the positioning of our modal. So starting top is maybe 50%. So if we wanted to make this thing halfway down our screen, that should, in theory at least, force it to go halfway down our screen. But I might not be understanding that correctly. There we go. Okay. So just setting ending top and starting top to the default, or to both to kind of large values, like 50 and 60% will send the modal further down on our screen. So this is just if you want to customize the positioning on the actual screen itself of where the modal shows up. So these were kind of all of the customization options you can add. There are quite a lot of things you can do. In fact, one thing that I've been kind of omitting just because I didn't want to delve too far into the JavaScript, since this is a CSS-oriented tutorial series, is that you can actually add these customizations for a lot of these elements here. Like if you want to go to, let me find something, to cards, I believe there might not be customizations for some of these. I know navbar, I'm pretty sure there's some customizations, but it actually might just be the JavaScript section. So actually, yeah, anything on this JavaScript section, which there are a few different kind of features that Materialize gives us, like pushpin, for example, or parallax, scroll spy. Scroll spy is one of them. That we get a couple different options, and it tells you all of their kind of what they do and how you can set them, which is in here. So, just keep that in mind, that there are a few different topics that you can kind of, or a few different features of each Materialize kind of component that you can customize to do exactly what you want. So just keep that in mind if you do want to continue learning Materialize on your own, which I don't recommend either way, because I've actually more recently started using just vanilla CSS for a lot of things. So this is a great tool for quickly mocking CSS layouts. In fact, I do use it a little bit on my website. So, take that as you will. I wouldn't fully recommend building an entire website just with Materialize, because I think that some of the limitations and kind of quirks of this library make it so that you only want to use parts of it, not the whole thing, kind of a deal like that. But anyways, let's go ahead and continue. So there are there's the fixed footer modal as well, which basically is scrollable, but then you have this footer here on the bottom that kind of stays. And the way you add that is, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this again. I'm going to replace our current modal with this one. And now, hold on. There we go. Now, when you click on this modal here, we should be able to get, I'm going to remove these starting top offsets. That way we don't get this annoying offset here. So now it's normal. And now you have the scrolling feature, although I'm going to have to do some lorem ipsum generator here, just so I can demonstrate how the scrolling works. Come down here. Let's probably just generate 20 paragraphs maybe. And just going to grab all that. And I'm going to toss that here into this paragraph. And now notice when we click on the modal, there's a lot of text here. But of course, the agree stays at the bottom, which is what makes it a fixed footer modal. And finally, there's the bottom kind of there's the bottom kind of sheet modal, which comes out from the bottom like this, and it acts the same, except it just comes out from the bottom and it's not a card. And the way you use that is, again, same modal trigger, except now you add the bottom sheet class to the modal itself, and that will just change how it kind of works. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this, which should be like that. And we'll just add in this final modal just to show you. Clicking on this will bring it up from the bottom. And again, we get that little bottom modal there. So that was pretty much all I had to show in this video. I didn't want that to run too long, but it did end up running a little bit longer than I thought. That is the kind of extent of which I will be covering Materialize CSS in general. If you do want to see some specific features, I guess, if you leave them in the comments or something, I might get around to making a kind of like extra episode that I'll add into the playlist. That way, any features that I didn't cover that you want me to cover, I can probably do that. But as a whole, overall, this tutorial series is probably over, and this actually will mark the end of the CSS miniseries collection as a whole, which means I finally get to go on to do backend and other kind of tutorials. Now, just as a word on what is next, there are quite a few things I have planned. Recently, just like 25 minutes ago, I went through and I actually added a bunch of potential tutorials. And of course, the question marks means they're possible. The kind of construction sign means they're planned. And some of these, I don't actually know everything that's possible here. Like Angular, I'm currently learning. Same thing with Rust, Kotlin, Elixir, and Golang. I'm technically learning all 4 of these as well. But aside from that, like C++, Unity, Puppeteer, and Discord, I know these. I'm just not fully sure if I will turn them into tutorials yet. And of course, if you have an opinion on any of these, just let me know. And I will probably just upgrade it to kind of planned status. In the near future, I am directly planning to make a intro to Node.js tutorial series, and then possibly Mongo and Postgres, which are kind of backend technologies. Probably also an intro to kind of web servers. I guess no, that pretty much is intro to Node.js. So yeah, there's some backend stuff coming up. General web, I'm going to do a GraphQL tutorial series, which is very interesting, and I might even go into TypeScript, which I should probably make a note about that TypeScript. I'm going to also do a TypeScript tutorial series, and then a React tutorial series as well. So there's just quite a bit that I have planned. This, just looking at this, all of these tutorials will probably end up running, if I do end up doing every single one of these, especially since some of these are very deep. All of these language tutorials will run, pretty long. Like C++ will probably end up running, same length as JavaScript. All of these will be pretty long tutorial series. Same thing with Unity, Introduction to Unity even will still run fairly long, maybe 20 episodes. Puppeteer might be shorter. Discord will run, probably same length as these. Same thing with React and Angular are going to take quite a while. So, this may not look like too big of a list, but I think all of these tutorials could easily run into towards the end of 2021, which, is perfect. So I kind of have a roadmap of where I'm going and what tutorials I'm creating. And of course, if there is any specific tutorial series or videos that you want to see, I will add these. And if you really want to see them, I'll fast track them to the front. That way they'll get done as soon as possible. But this is kind of just a general plan of what's planned. And of course, if you come here to my GitHub, my username is Matthew-plus programming. My repository is called MatthewLinYT. You can kind of see the the list of planned videos, and then you can leave a comment if there's something that you want to see that you don't already see here on this list, or if you want to see something urgently, then of course I can move that up. So that was pretty much all I had planned. I just wanted to go over a little bit of what's next in my channel, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that was pretty much all. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.